After years of being the family outcast, I won the lottery and they came crawling back. The first time my mother called me sweetheart again, I almost dropped my phone into the sink full of dishes. It was on speaker, balanced on the windowsill while I scrubbed dried pasta off a pan. And her voice came floating through like it hadn't spent the last 4 years tightening whenever she said my name. "We've missed you so much, sweetheart," she said, and my hand slipped on the soapy metal. The pan clanged hard against the sink. For a second, I just stared at the phone, bubbles sliding down my forearm, heartbeat thudding in my ears loud enough that I barely heard what she said next. "We were thinking maybe we could all get together this weekend. Your brother will be there. And the kids. Like old times." "Like old times?" I repeated, and my voice sounded weird even to me, wobbling between a laugh and a choke. My girlfriend Jess glanced over from the table where she was answering emails, eyebrows knitting in question. I shook my head at her, put the sponge down, and grabbed the phone with wet fingers. My mother was still talking, words tumbling over each other. We were all so surprised, when we saw your face on the news. Your father said, "Isn't that our Mia? We're just so happy for you. God really blessed you, darling. We knew you'd land on your feet." It was a Tuesday night when the winning numbers were announced. I remember because I almost didn't buy the ticket. I was on my way home from another miserable closing shift at the bookstore cafe, half dead on my feet, smelling like burnt espresso and milk. The corner shop was bright in that aggressively fluorescent way, humming refrigerators and a bored teenager behind the counter scrolling his phone. I went in for cheap instant noodles and cat food. The old guy in front of me was holding up the line, arguing about scratchies. "Next," the kid finally muttered without looking up. There was a sign taped to the counter. "Power pick $30, Tuesday jackpot." I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the fact my shoe sole had peeled halfway off earlier that day, and I'd taped it with duct tape like some tragic cartoon character. Maybe it was the way Jess had fallen asleep sitting upright the night before because we couldn't afford the physio she needed for her back. "Can I get one of those?" I asked, nodding at the sign. The kid finally looked at me. "You mean the power pick?" he said, like I might have confused it with a Mars bar. "Yeah," I said. "Sure, why not?" I remember thinking, there goes half a tank of petrol, idiot. I stuffed the ticket in my wallet and forgot about it. The next night, I was on the couch with Jess, both of us in pajamas, empty takeaway containers on the coffee table because neither of us had the energy to cook. The TV was just background noise. A reality show about people renovating houses we could never afford. When the lotto ad came on with its dramatic music and little numbered balls bouncing around, Jess nudged me. "Didn't you buy one of those?" "Oh, right," I said, already reaching for my battered wallet. "Let's see how rich we're not." They started reading the numbers. First one, matched. Second, matched. Third, matched. My stomach did a weird lurch. "Okay, that's cute," I said. Jess laughed. "Beginner's luck. Fourth number, matched. Fifth. Sixth." My hands were sweating so badly the ink on the ticket was starting to smudge under my thumb. By the time they got to the Powerball and that matched too, I wasn't laughing. I was standing in the middle of our uneven living room carpet, ticket shaking between my fingers, my heart beating somewhere in my throat. "No," I whispered. Jess sat up straighter. "What?" I said, every word feeling like it had to fight its way out. "I think we just won. I've read stories about people screaming, dancing, fainting. I just sat down very carefully on the floor like my knees had forgotten how to function and stared at the ticket while my brain scrambled through every possible explanation that wasn't what it clearly was. Misprint, old ticket, wrong draw, parallel universe. Jess grabbed her phone and pulled up the official Lotto website. "Read them again," she said. We went through them one by one, her finger tracing the screen, my shaking hand clutching that little rectangle of paper like it was a live wire. Every number lined up. "How much is the jackpot?" I asked, dazed. She scrolled. 32 million, she said. Then she blinked. "Wait, is that each or total? Does it matter?" I croaked. My mouth had gone completely dry. The next 48 hours were a blur of confirming, calling, barely sleeping, alternating between hysterical laughter and this gut-deep terror that somehow we'd get to the claim office and they'd say, "Oops, our mistake." The lotto people were calmer than I expected. They walked us through everything, suggested we get independent financial advice, told us to take time before making big decisions. "Don't tell everyone straight away," the woman on the phone advised. "You'd be surprised how people change." I laughed at that, a harsh little sound. "You don't know my family," I said. "We're not even really talking." I should have knocked on wood. "So, the family. I'm the middle child of 3. My older brother, Daniel, is the golden boy. Engineer, married, 2 kids, owns a house with a yard and a barbecue he posts about like it's a 3rd child. My younger sister, Lucy, is the baby, eternally finding herself with various art projects, part-time jobs, and overseas trips that somehow always get funded despite her perma-broke status. Me? I'm the one who came out at 19, dropped out of my first degree when my mental health tanked, and moved in with a girlfriend my parents refused to call by name for the first year. At every family gathering, I was either too sensitive or too political, or too negative. They'd ask about my job at the bookstore like it was a cute little hobby. When I tried to talk about struggling to pay rent, my mom would purse her lips and say, "Well, if you'd stuck with accounting like your father suggested." The real break happened 4 years ago at a Christmas lunch that still pops into my head sometimes at 3 a.m., like a jump scare. Daniel had made some snide comment about rainbow people always wanting special treatment, and I'd finally snapped. I told him his jokes weren't funny, that our parents' constant minimizing of my relationship hurt, that I was tired of being the punchline. He rolled his eyes and said I was being dramatic. My dad told me not to ruin Christmas with politics. My mom cried, because that's what she does when she doesn't want to take a side. I left early with a Tupperware of untouched roast potatoes and Jess's hand in mine. A week later, my mom called to tell me I owed them an apology for making a scene. I said no. Communication trickled down to the occasional text. Birthdays, obligatory Merry Christmas, my mom forwarding weird wellness articles. I still got family photos sometimes. Daniel's kids in matching pajamas, Lucy posing in Bali. I wasn't cut off exactly, just pushed to the outer orbit. The outcast who'd made life difficult for everyone by insisting on being herself out loud. So when the lotto woman warned me about telling people, I thought, at least I don't have to worry about that. My parents barely call as it is. And for a little while, that was true. Jess and I didn't tell anyone for the first week. We met with a financial advisor who didn't wear a tie and used words like, "boring is good," that made me trust him. We set up a new account. We paid off every debt we had. I cried when I saw my student loan balance go to 0 on the screen. We sat at our rickety kitchen table and made lists on scrap paper. Things we need and things we want. Need: new mattresses, dental work, proper physio for Jess's back, a reliable car that didn't make a rattling noise every time we turned left. Want: a holiday somewhere with sand that isn't more cigarette butt than grain. A couch that wasn't rescued from the side of the road. Maybe one day, a house with more than one window that opened properly. Can we get a fridge that doesn't freeze the lettuce into a solid block of ice? Jess asked, grinning, and I felt this weird mixture of wild joy and guilt. We could get a fridge that sings to you when you open it, I said. We could get a fridge for every room. We didn't, obviously. The financial advisor's voice rang in my head. Don't go nuts. Give yourself time to adjust. You have the rest of your life to spend this. We upgraded a few things quietly. New laptop because my old one wheezed like it had emphysema. Paid off my friend's car repair because she'd been crying about choosing between that and rent. Set aside money for Jess's parents, who'd always been kind to me in a way that made me ache. The news got out without us really intending it to. Lotto winners are public record unless you jump through serious hoops, and we hadn't had time to even think about that. There was a tiny article in the local paper. Hometown woman wins big. They didn't use my last name, just initials and vague details, but the photo was there. Me, holding a massive novelty check, looking like I'd just been hit by a truck made of confetti. My phone started buzzing within hours. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. High school classmates, old coworkers, that cousin who'd unfriended me when I posted something about pride. Then my mother. She called twice before I picked up. I'd been staring at the screen, watching Mum flash, feeling my stomach tie itself into knots. Jess put her hand over mine. You don't owe them anything, she said quietly. I know, I said. I answered anyway. Her voice was bright. Too bright. Mia, I saw the paper. We nearly fell off our chairs. Why didn't you tell us? We've been busy, I said, glancing around our little living room, half empty because we'd already decided to move and were packing slowly. There's been a lot to process. We just feel so out of the loop, she said. And there it was, that twist of guilt, like I'd wronged them by not immediately driving over with a suitcase full of cash. We want to celebrate with you, as a family. That's what led to the call over the sink, the sweetheart and the like old times. I wish I could say I responded with something clever, some perfectly calibrated boundary. What I actually said was, why now? My mom paused. What do you mean, why now? You haven't asked to get together as a family in years? I said. Every time we've seen each other, it's because I showed up for birthdays or holidays, and even then it was tense. You told me I owed you an apology for existing in a way you didn't like. You made it very clear I was the problem. Now I win some money and suddenly you miss me? Mia, that's not fair, she said, her voice instantly shifting into wounded mode. Of course we missed you. You pulled away. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Arguing with my mother is like chasing smoke. I have to go, I said instead. I'm in the middle of something. We just want to talk, she insisted. Your father wants to talk. Daniel and Lucy were saying we should all start fresh. Did Daniel and Lucy say that? I asked quietly. Or did they say, holy crap, Mia's rich now? She gasped. Don't be vulgar, she snapped, the sweetness cracking for a second. We're your family. We're happy for you. That's all. Okay, I said. Thanks for calling. I hung up before she could reply. My hand was shaking. Jess watched me dry my hands on a tea towel with more force than necessary. How bad? She asked. They want a family get-together, I said. Apparently I'm sweetheart again. She snorted. Of course you are. Here's the part where I admit something unflattering. A tiny part of me wanted to say yes. Not because I wanted to shower them with money, but because the idea of walking into a room where they all had to be nice to me for once was tempting. I imagined Daniel's face trying to wrap his head around the fact that his failure of a sister had more money than him now. I imagined Lucy asking about funding her next art residency. I imagined my father, who'd once told me, your choices have consequences, young lady, carefully tripping over gender-neutral language like it might bite. Revenge fantasy? Jess asked that night when I confessed. We were lying in bed, light off, the faint glow from the street lamp outside painting stripes across the ceiling. A little, I said. I know it's petty, but I keep thinking about all the times I showed up broke and tired and they made jokes about my phase or my little job. Now they're acting like there was never a problem. If I do see them, I want it on my terms. So set terms, she said simply. That's how the plan started. Nothing dramatic. No fake outs or hidden cameras. Just boundaries with teeth. First, I wrote an email. Not a text, not a phone call, an email so I could choose my words and they couldn't talk over me. I addressed it to my parents, CC'd Daniel and Lucy. I hear you want to meet, I wrote. I'm open to that, but only if a few things are clear. I laid it out. That my relationship with Jess was not up for debate or snide remarks. That any conversation about money would be shut down immediately. That if I heard phrases like, you owe it to family, or help your brother-sister out, I'd leave. That I wasn't going to pretend the last few years didn't happen. I finished with, if you want to reconnect with me as a person, not a bank account, I'm willing to try. If you're primarily interested in my bank account, I suggest you save us all some time. I hovered over send for a long time. Then I clicked. My dad replied first. 2 sentences. We don't need lectures from our daughter. We raised you. We'll talk about this in person. No, we won't, I thought. Lucy's reply came half an hour later. Wow, okay. You think we're all gold diggers? Good to know what you think of us. Daniel didn't reply at all, which honestly was very on brand. My mother called again instead of writing back. Why are you being like this? She demanded. We're just trying to be a family again, and you're sending these contracts. They're boundaries, I said. If you can't respect them in an email, there's no way you'll respect them in person. Fine, she huffed. We agree. No jokes, no money talk, just lunch. Will that satisfy you? No, I said, but it's a start. We picked a neutral cafe halfway between our places. Jess offered to come with me. I said no at first, then changed my mind. Actually, yeah, I said. If they want to pretend I'm part of the family again, they can deal with the fact that I come with her. Walking in that Sunday, my stomach was a knot of dread and something like grim curiosity. I wore clothes that actually fit me properly for once. A soft green dress I'd bought after the win. Not flashy, but nicer than my usual faded jeans. Jess squeezed my hand under the table when we sat down. They were already there. My mother stood and air-kissed the side of my face like I was a distant relative, not her daughter. My father shook Jess's hand stiffly, calling her Jessica, even though she'd corrected him 1,000,000 times. Daniel gave me a nod, eyes flicking over my outfit, my watch, like he was trying to calculate numbers in his head. Lucy hugged me with an exaggerated "missed you" that somehow felt both too much and not enough. For the first 10 minutes, it was small talk. Weather. Work. My mom talking about her garden. My dad complaining about the government. Then, inevitably, it slipped. So, Daniel said, leaning back, folding his arms. Must be nice, hey, no more money stress. Jess's hand squeezed my knee under the table, a reminder. I took a breath. I'm grateful, I said carefully. It's changed a lot of things. I bet, Lucy chimed in. You could, actually fund my art collective, you know. She laughed like it was a joke. Her eyes didn't look jokey. That's not what I'm here to talk about, I said. Oh, come on, Daniel said. Don't tell me you're going to hoard it all like some dragon. Family helps family. Remember when I spotted you rent that one time? I did remember. He'd brought it up at every opportunity for 2 years afterward. Yep, I said. And I paid you back with interest. You didn't spot me, you gave me a loan. My mother's smile had gone brittle. We're just happy for you, she said again, the phrase starting to sound like static. It's such a blessing. Of course, with blessings come responsibilities. She gave me a meaningful look. Here it was. What responsibilities? I asked, forcing myself to keep my tone light. Well, she said, fiddling with her necklace. You know your father is still working so hard. And the mortgage and your grandparents in the nursing home and Daniel's kids. You're in a position to make life easier for everyone now. That's all we're saying. Jess's hand dug into my knee. I stared at my mother for a long moment. You do realize I've been struggling for years, and the only thing anyone ever said was, you made your choices, right? I said quietly. Now I make one choice that happens to come with a lot of zeros, and suddenly we're talking about collective responsibility? My father's jaw tightened. Watch your tone, he said. We are still your parents. I know, I said. That's why I'm not just getting up and walking out. The conversation spiraled from there. Daniel brought up how unfair it was that someone like me stumbled into money while he'd worked his ass off for his. Lucy alternated between guilt-tripping, I've always had your back, and outright begging. Just a small loan to get my project off the ground, you'd change my life. At one point, my mom actually said, you don't want to be the kind of person who lets money come between family. That's when I laughed. It burst out of me before I could stop it. You did that long before the lottery, I said. Silence. My father's face went red. Meaning what? He demanded. Meaning when I needed emotional support, when I was struggling with myself and asking you to see me, you told me I was making trouble. When I told you your son's jokes about my sexuality hurt, you told me not to make a fuss. When I brought Jess over and you refused to use her name for a year, you made it very clear where I stood. Money isn't what came between us. You did. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were trying our best, she whispered. I'm sure you were, I said, and I meant it in a way that surprised me. But your best wasn't good enough for me. I had to learn to live without you. Now suddenly you want back in. I need you to understand that you're not just stepping back into the same place you had before. That place is gone. They all looked at me like I'd started speaking another language. Jess stayed quiet, her presence solid beside me. "So what then?" Daniel asked finally, lip curling. "You're cutting us off unless we grovel?" "No," I said. "I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm just changing the terms. I'm happy to have a relationship if we can treat each other like adults, not ATMs and obligations. I will help where I choose, if I choose, because I want to, not because you guilt me. And if you can't handle that, then maybe we spend some more time apart." "You've really changed," Lucy muttered. "Yeah," I said. "Turns out having enough money to afford therapy and time to think about your boundaries does that to a person." We didn't stay much longer. My father muttered something about needing to get going. My mother hugged me tightly at the door, the kind of hug that looks good from the outside. "Just remember we're your family," she said in my ear. "I know," I said. "That's why this is so hard." In the weeks after, the texts came in waves. Some angry, some pleading, some passive-aggressive. Daniel sent me links to articles about ungrateful lotto winners. Lucy posted cryptic things on Instagram about money-changing people. My mother oscillated between, "We're proud of you," and "You're breaking your father's heart." I helped, but not the way they wanted. I paid off my grandparents' outstanding nursing home bills directly to the facility because they'd always been kind to me when no one else was. I sent my parents a voucher for a weekend away because they've never taken one in their lives. I set up an education fund for my niece and nephew that their parents can't touch because the kids didn't ask to be born into this mess. I did not buy my brother a new car. I did not fund Lucy's art collective. I did not invest in my dad's suddenly urgent idea to expand his business. They weren't subtle about their displeasure. But the thing is, for the first time in my life, their displeasure didn't threaten my survival. I didn't need them to keep a roof over my head. I didn't need them to help with emergency expenses. That shift in power made all the difference. There are moments when it still hurts like hell. When my mom posts a family photo and I am conspicuously absent. When I see my niece in a school uniform I paid for and know she doesn't know it was me. When Jess's parents invite us over for dinner and fuss about us taking leftovers home, and I feel this weird grief for something I'm not sure I ever really had. Winning the lottery didn't fix my family. If anything, it threw all our broken bits into sharper relief. People say money changes you, but I don't think that's quite right. I think it reveals you. It takes away the everyday struggle that hides who you really are and leaves your priorities naked. Their priority was always control, dressed up as looking out for you. Mine, I'm learning, is peace, even if that peace doesn't include everyone I thought it would. I still see them sometimes. Short visits, coffee instead of lunch. I keep my boundaries like armor. When they slip and make a joke at my expense, I name it and leave if it keeps going. When they hint about money, I remind them once, then change the subject. If they push, I end the conversation. It's not easy. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like doing rehab on a joint you've used wrong your whole life. Do I sometimes fantasize about cutting them off completely? Sure. Do I also sometimes fantasize about all of us in a backyard somewhere, laughing over burnt sausages, my mother fussing over Jess's plate while my father and Daniel argue about football, and no one making it weird? Absolutely. Both of those things can be true. After years of being the family outcast, the money didn't magically pull me into the circle. It just meant that when they came crawling back, I could decide how close to let them get. And that, honestly, feels like the actual jackpot.